Hi, friends. Welcome to the Mobile Bev Pros podcast, a podcast dedicated to providing mobile bar and event professionals with the information they need to succeed. I'm your host, business coach, and founder of the Mobile Bar Academy, Sarah Murphy. In each episode, the Mobile Bev Pros team will bring you industry experts, information, anecdotes, and opinions with the goal of assisting you in building a profitable, sustainable, and successful business that supports you in creating wealth. I'm excited to share with you today's episode, so let's get started. Today on the podcast, we're going to talk about client experience. And I'm really excited about this one because while it is one of the 6 pillars that we teach on, which include sales, marketing, operations, mindset, and money, also client experience, it is the one that gets the least amount of airtime. And this whole process of working through premium luxury, figuring out how best to help the members of this community really elevate as we get more competition, more mobile bars come online. I hear more cities becoming quote unquote saturated. How do we get the MVP community to stand apart? And coming from hospitality, such as myself, the first place you always look is the experience. But historically, the things that people have come to us asking and willing to pay us for, honestly, are strategic things. So tell me how to market and tell me how to price and tell me how to close more sales, which all very important in business. But there comes a certain point where you check off kind of all of those strategic to-dos and you're looking at a machine. Nothing against a machine, but humans are emotional individuals. We're an emotional species. And what helps us take action, which is like actually pull the trigger and decide between options, is almost always our emotions. And emotions are tied very tightly to this client experience piece. But I think even the terminology client experience tends to feel very vanilla. It's very bland.
Yeah, thus the podcast today, because when you actually get into it, it is the opposite of bland. This is probably one of my favorite. I say this on every podcast. This is going to be one of my favorite episodes. And it's because it has everything to do with creating raving fans for your brand, turning people on, turning people off, becoming a go-to in the industry. And it starts well before the booking and it lasts long after the booking. And so this is going to be an absolute treat and it's going to bleed perfectly into our in-person workshop that you're hosting in May in Nashville. So I'm excited for this episode.
So for anybody who listened to the last episode, if you didn't go back because it was lovely, we've gotten a lot of really good feedback on that style, which is not what the style of this particular podcast is. It was a little bit more of just Dawn and I riffing as we learn a thing. And it was a lot of fun. And what we announced in that podcast was that we were working on the details of this in-person workshop that's happening. And we have since launched it. So it is live. 6 of the 12 tickets have already been claimed and paid for. So we only have 6 tickets left. It's very intimate. It's an all-day experience and it's going to be a lot of fun. The purpose of that entire workshop is to really go deep and map out the client experience for your business from the awareness stage straight through to the advocacy stage. And because it is such a squishy and emotional process, we have tried to make it a little bit more juicy and a little bit more relatable, I would say, by calling it sexy selling. And the reason that we called it that is because the client experience is actually all about intimacy. It's about knowing who you are and where you thrive, and then reflecting that back to your potential clients in a way that makes them fall in love with that part of themselves. It's so yummy.
And this lends credibility to the importance of knowing your ideal client intimately, inside and out, so that you can speak their language. When you speak the language of your ideal client, they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel valued. And one, they're more likely to book you, but two, they're far more likely to become an advocate for your brand. And that's what we want. We want you guys to have amplifiers out in the field telling people all about how wonderful your work is, singing your praises.
Yeah, same. And I really love using the analogy of relationships to help people understand what we mean when we talk about a client journey or client experience for their company. So you're not going to marry every person you date, nor is every person in the entire person pool going to be an ideal client. And so I think it's important for everyone to get off straight with the understanding that not every client is an ideal client, and not every potential client is even someone who should be a client for you. And anyone who's been in this business for any amount of time is going to have a story wherein they bent or they made concessions in order to make a sale, and they regretted every single minute of it because that was never their client. Sure, they were paid for it and sure they executed it, but it was a nightmare for both parties. And so that's why you'll hear as such like a buzzword in the industry is like ideal client. And you actually reflected back to me yesterday something that I think is really important. And because we've already established on this podcast that sometimes you need to hear things 3 to 5 times for you to really understand it. One of the things that we say all the time is that you are your ideal client, which is why in this workshop, one of the first things that we do to get really clear on who you are. What are your dreams? What are your goals? What are your desires? What is your unique genius in the world? What are the things that you love to do in your business? What are the things you hate to do in your business? What would you do every day, even if it was for free? What would you absolutely not do, even if you got a whole lot of money for it? Right. And these types of exercises or thought exercises really help us distill down how are we different than everyone else and who do we want to work with? Because the louder you are about who you are, the more likely you are going to get the clients who like the same things you do. It's just like dating, and the fact that you date someone because you want to know what they like and where you connect. Where are the similarities and values? Where are the things that you are going to be able to see pieces of yourself and pieces of your own preferences in this person that you're investing time with? Same thing for businesses. You want to make sure that your values align. You want to make sure that they like what you like, that the style that they show up in is agreeable to you. But what we find is that people will look around in the market that they're in and they will try and emulate those things that successful people in their market are doing because they see that those things are successful. And then they just start being imitators of everything that's in the market. And you and I were riffing on the difference between genius and imitators last night. So I'd love to hear a little bit more from you on the cost of being an imitator.
Yeah, while there's nothing wrong with being an imitator to some extent, most of us are born with a blueprint for success. Success looks different for us than it does for everyone else. It is our unique essence and how we create art in the world. When we sacrifice our genius in lieu of someone else's brand of success, there's a little bit of soul loss. There's an unfulfillment that sets in. When you're not fully embodying your genius, what you'll find is that one, you don't know really who your authentic self is, what your purpose is, what your passions are, but also your community isn't turned on. Right. And so that's where client experience sort of becomes vanilla because you're attempting to be all things to all people. If there are drinks being served, we want our bar there. The problem with that is that you're not really leaning into what makes you unique. And therefore, you're not identifiable to those who resonate with your uniqueness. And it really does. It costs you sometimes years attempting to figure out who you truly are and what legacy you want to leave behind because you're attempting to force your genius through someone else's lens of success and therefore becoming an imitator. And imitators are a commodity. They're cheap, they're easy to find. There's nothing special about them. It might break in the next few months, you never know, you know. And genius product, genius service is all about bringing something to the table that no one else can. That's the mark between luxury and premium or mass market is that you are really defining the edges of who you want to serve and who you want to be.
I want to play on your edges analogy there because I think this will be a really easy way for people to understand. So if you are a circle and you're just out there like, we like circles, circles are right for us. And then someone gets into that circle container and then they realize, oh, well, we like some of your circle stuff, but we're actually an oblate spheroid, right? Which is the shape of the earth for anyone who doesn't know. It's a little fat in the middle. The issue here is that if you're just going to be a circle, then other rounded objects, rounded people are going to think that you're right. But the more specific that you get, the more defined your edges, the more specifically people can see themselves in you. And they can say, I like those edges. You're not just a generalized circle. You are this other shape that I really like and I really resonate with, and me too. And so the more specific that you can get about who you are, and the more clearly you know what your genius is, the more obvious you become to other, because nobody is a circle. Nobody is a circle. We all have a unique shape. We all have a unique prism that we're operating from. And when you try and be generic enough that you are palatable to the masses, then to your point, you become a commodity. And now we're just looking at price because no one can see your shapes. There's no shape, we're just round. So now we're just looking for price because price is the only differentiator between how you show up in the world and how other people show up in the world. And so the process of getting to really understand what are you creating in the world? And the more you look to everybody else in your industry, the more you're like, well, this person offers this, and this person packages in this way, and this person packages in that way. You are going to book people if you emulate. You will, because people are like, I know what that looks like. I can now look apples to apples as to what people are offering, and I can compare price, or I can do this, that, or the other thing. But when you stand alone, when you're like, okay, everyone else is doing it this way, but this person's doing this way, and that is just so sexy. Like that is just, I love the way that they package. I love the experience. I love their emails. I love the way they show up online. I love the way that they treat me. I love the emotions that I have after I engage with them. That is where we start to differentiate. And that's really what this workshop is about. It's about plotting out every single client touch point that is possible for you, and then asking yourself, what do you want people to know? What do you want people to feel? And what do you want people to do at every single client touch point? It's a game changer.
This is the difference between mastery, becoming an artisan, and everybody else.
We hear this all the time because when we get people into our containers, the very first thing that we do is we ask them, what's your mission, vision, value, and archetype? We want to know, who are you? What are you trying to achieve? And how do you want to accomplish that in this particular market? And they struggle so hard. The minute you ask people to sit down and ask, what makes you different than everyone else? How are you doing what we do so that you're not just lost in a sea of other mobile bartenders? And they really struggle. And that's one of the things that we're able to bring to the table is that mirror to be like, well, here's what I see about you. Here's what stands out, in my opinion, about what you're offering to the market.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people struggle with that. Not to get too deep into the psychology of things, but it's a little bit of that people pleaser attitude, right? We get a lot of people who they have the heart of service. And so they want to be of service to as many people as possible. And somewhere along the way, through dramas and traumas of childhood and life, they've lost the essence of who they are. And now they're just trying to make everyone around them happy. And that translates then into the business. And so what we see is they come in and they can't define who they are because they're afraid that defining who they are will turn some people off, and it will. So they're having a hard time really defining their genius because it's been watered down. And so they're trying to look at themselves through the lens of what other people want them to be and not through the lens of who they truly are. And again, that's the cost of sacrificing genius. You lose a little bit of your authentic self every time you people please.
100%. The other thing that you do when you dilute who you are to the market is you dilute your ability to make money. And what I mean by that is that if you invest in a commodity, you expect that to be affordable. If you invest in something that is truly unique and truly applicable to kind of what you're looking for, and is super specific to the experience that you're looking for, you're willing to pay more money for it because it's not a commodity. It's not just a bartender at an event. It is somebody who's showing up in this way that is what I had in my mind, or they were able to make this experience come to life for me. And this actually can somewhat leak into this concept of the love languages that we're actually going to do a mini training on. All of this will be in the show notes as to the dates, the times, where to sign up. It'll be virtual, the mini training, but it is an important piece of how to connect and resonate with ideal clients when they're coming from various different perspectives. So the first step, obviously, that we've been talking about here is know thyself. And that's a thing that goes way back, right? So know thyself. The next thing that you need to do is know thy ideal client. So once you know yourself, you kind of know what you want in an ideal client. And so now we need to attract our ideal client. So think about the peacock with the pretty feathers, and you're showing off, and you want to represent your best, brightest colors. The best way to do that is to reflect back to people the colors that they like, right? And so when I say figuring out who you are helps ideal clients to see the things that they love about themselves in you, that's kind of what I mean, right? You're going to be attracted to their favorite colors. And I've kind of distilled it down into like 4 different love languages of buyers. And we will go deep into this in the in-person workshop. And the reason that I want to go deep into this is because if you can reflect back the 4 different love languages in your brand, it is going to make the sales and closing process so much easier for people, because they're going to feel seen, heard, and understood no matter where they're coming from. So when you hear the term meet them where they're at, that's this, right? So the very first love language here that feeds off of what you just said is the lover. And their core driver is connection, relationships. They're very loyal. Their biggest goal in life is to build relationships and to feel at harmony with the world around them. So they love being listened to as an individual, not necessarily a collective. So if you have like copy paste, one size fits all marketing and messaging, they're going to be turned off by that because they don't feel like an individual or a human. The other thing that they really seek is approval from others. So they're the ones that are going to be like, let me ask my best friend or my maid of honor, or I'm going to ask a coworker their thoughts. They're looking for approval. They're looking for consensus, because the relationships of the group are more important to them than necessarily their personal aspirations. And so that's one of the 4. And so when you create messaging that will resonate with the lover, you're looking for testimonials that talk about how people felt and how their guests complimented them for ages. You're looking for customization. So it's not one size fits all packaging, like we can cater this to your specific event. Yes, we can change this, that, or the other thing, right? Those are the things that are going to really attract the lover. Whereas if you are trying to attract someone like the scholar, they are all about the details. They're all about the facts. They're all about the fine print. They want to know about the return policy and the travel policy. They want to know all of that. That doesn't make them less attractive as a buyer. It just means that you have to woo them in a slightly different way. So I don't want to go too deep into all of that because this is not a 4-hour podcast, but I did want to touch a little bit on a little bit of a preview of like when I talk about client experience and people are like, well, how are you going to teach me that? That's the kind of thing that we're going to be talking about. We're going to talk about buyer psychology. We're going to talk about the entire journey. So we have the lead process, we have the sales process, we have the onboarding process, we have the planning process, we have the execution process, we have the offboarding process, we have the retention process. What are all the different client touch points that you should be thinking about within all of those processes? What do you want them to know, feel, and do at every stage? And if we can craft and curate every single touch point throughout the entire client experience, which you will walk away from this in-person workshop with a very clear understanding of how your company shows up at every single one of those, like your client experience will be absolutely untouchable.
Recognizing which of the 4 archetypes your business resonates with, or potentially outliers, because there are 12 to 24, depending on what you're looking at, core archetypes that your business can embody. But you've boiled it down to 4 core. and then those 4 core actually meld into this delicious little melting pot, is gonna help you stand out and help you recognize not only your own genius, but how that genius translates to the world and into a higher purpose. What I will say is that I think the OGs had a little bit of an advantage. We did a podcast on whether or not the industry as a whole was slowing down. And you came to the conclusion in that podcast that's entirely false and it's a mindset issue. And so if you haven't listened to that one, go back. It's so good. But I think the OGs had a little bit of an advantage here because the unique selling point used to be the mobile bar. That experience alone was unique. Not everybody had one. Not even all the states had one, right? Whereas now what we're seeing is that mobile bars are becoming more of a commodity, whether we like that or not. It is what it is. They're popping up everywhere and in all different shapes and sizes. And if I had a dollar for every white rig I saw, and so it's now more important than ever that your mobile bar does something different. To stand out against the sea of mobile bars that is emerging, the industry will continue to grow, and we love that. But you have to be different. You have to stand out. And that's the only way you're going to succeed as the industry moves forward is if you have an edge, an understanding of who you are, who your ideal client is, what makes you unique. And it's no longer just relying on the fact that you have a rig that's blue instead of white, or that you have a rig at all. And so this workshop is going to be pivotal to the continued success and potentially the elevation of the industry.
Yeah, you touched on a few things there that I absolutely want to dig into. So the first is, yes, when OGs first got started, I was one of them. The rig was the thing. Look, I have a rig. So now look at me. I'm different than every other mobile bartender that you could possibly hire for this event because I have this rig. I have this elevated experience, right? And man, if I had a dollar for every time I read somebody's mission statement or website that said elevate your bar experience, right? And so the rig was the differentiator. If you look back to see how many OGs that got started during that era and built their empire upon their rig, they're either out of business or they have pivoted in some way, shape, or form to clearly define their differentiator in this new market. And it's no longer their rig. Do they have the rig? Yes. But is that the reason people are hiring them and the reason that they stand apart? No. The other thing that I want to mention is when we say you have to be different, what we mean is you have to be an individual. You have to be individualistic. You have to understand your edges, what makes you different from a standard circle so that you can really play up your differences. And the third thing that I want to talk about here is this concept of elevation. So if the mobile bar rigs elevated the industry 5, 6, 7 years ago to a new level, and now the rigs are kind of commonplace. Not everyone has them. We don't even preach that you need one. That's how like insignificant, in my opinion, the rigs are to elevating the experience these days, is because they're so ubiquitous that they're no longer a differentiator and they're no longer the thing that's going to make you the big money. So what's next? And that's where this comes in. The client experience is what's next. Intentional customer journey is what's next. It's this wooing of the premium buyer, which, believe it or not, there are fewer premium buyers than there are mass market buyers or budget buyers, and there are even fewer luxury buyers. And so if you're to stand out in an already condensed market, we have to focus on the things that are important to those people. And that absolutely 100% is the dream, is the experience, is the way they're treated, is who they work with, the expert in their field. Can they take care of them in a way that they are used to being taken care of? And that's 100% about the client experience and the expectations that get set during that process. And that is what we're focusing on in this workshop.
To your analogy about courting and marriage, when you know what is important to people,
Mm-hmm.
when you show up for people in ways that they value, and they have to be ways that you value as well, lest you lose your soul, right? You become
Sure.
burnt out and bitter. Instead, you find ways that work for both of you, ways that you can love and ways that they want to be loved. And that's how
Yes.
you create an exceptional experience.
Yes, absolutely. The other thing I want to mention about the love languages is that Your brand can absolutely speak to all of the love languages. And that's really what we want to teach in this workshop, is that you don't have to talk to one of them and say, people who have this love language are my people and I only speak to them. Now you can. So if you only wanted to speak to the lover and you only wanted to talk about connection and relationships and community and make them feel, unique and individualistic, then absolutely go for it. That's probably like Victoria's Secret's big thing, right? Like they're probably focusing very much on the lover in their marketing and not so much on the scholar who's like, where was this made? What's the return policy, right? Like, so you can have a primary and you can certainly like to show up away, but your brand can also speak to all of them, because it is not hard in your marketing to include reflections of, this is how we see you and hear you and value you and treat you like in a unique perspective. And also, if you're interested in reading the fine print, we're very transparent in all of the things about working with us. And so here's our facts page, and here are some commonly asked questions that we have answers to, and this is our return policy. Like, you can volunteer that information, and then you will make both the lover and the scholar fall in love with you, as well as if you spoke to them in the ways that really resonate with the boss and the dreamer, which we'll talk about in more depth in our programming. You can meet all four different love languages where they're at. And so the important thing is understanding what are the core drivers and what are the core fears of people in the buying position. And if your marketing and your lead funnels and your sales process can make each of them feel comfortable, then your sales process will become much easier. But then also, once you get them in, you'll know how to hold them in a way that makes them feel like they made a good decision. Talk about buyer's remorse. It's usually because there's a disconnect between what they bought into and what they experienced. That's what buyer's remorse is. And so we can hold them in the buying process. We can nurture them during the execution post sales process. And then we can offboard them with love so that they can go out and advocate to the world around them the experience that they had. And that really comes from understanding core drivers and core fears of the people who are investing in you and your business.
And there's so much nuance to this, just like with the six-figure blueprint, they're all holding hands. You don't wanna fall into the trap of being all things to all people, because then your message is muddled, right? And that's why this workshop is gonna be so vast, because it's such a nuanced topic. Yes, you can serve and show up for all 4 of these archetypes, and the closer you lean to one or the other, the more that comes across in your messaging and you're easily identifiable. And so while we absolutely want you to be able to meet people where they are and speak to each of these 4 archetypes, we also want you to have a solid understanding in your individuation, in your identity, and in your genius, and how you're showing up and serving the identities and geniuses of your ideal clients.
I'm a visual thinker. And so when I see in my head the love languages, I see them as color filters. And so, for example, if you have the 4 archetypes in front of you and you have a red light, it's going to show one stronger, one a little bit less, the third, even more faded out. And then the fourth one's going to be invisible to them. They're not going to resonate at all with that fourth one, but they're going to really resonate with one of them really strongly. And then if you switch the color, maybe it's no longer red, maybe it's blue, a totally different one is going to be stronger, right? And so using that analogy, you can play all 4 of these colors, but only one of those 4 is going to really resonate with the filter that people are looking through, which is why I think it's important to recognize which is your preferred color so you can really show up there brilliantly, but then also understand how the others play so that you can at least meet them there. Because if they're not the first color, maybe they're the second color, they don't resonate quite as strongly as your ideal client, but they still are close enough that they can make that hop by making some small little concessions.
This is giving the difference between people who come in and want to serve corporate clients and the people who come in and want to serve weddings, right? And there are people who can absolutely serve both. It's easy to become vanilla when you attempt to do that. And so even if you're going to be serving both, you are not going to be at every corporate event that ever happens. You're going to be serving corporate events that align with your core archetypes and with your genius. And the same goes for weddings. And so whereas weddings, you would want to put more emphasis on the lover when you are branding and messaging to your market, for corporate, you would want to put more emphasis on the boss when you're branding and marketing and messaging. Not to say that you can't serve both, because you can. And you have to be really secure. That's a good word. You have to be really secure in your archetype, in your genius, in your signatures for success, to not become vanilla when you're attempting to diversify your target audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And so while we could have named this workshop No More Vanilla Mobile Bars, we didn't. We named it Sexy Selling, Woo the Premium Buyer. And that's what we're after. And why the premium buyer? One, because the premium buyer is more discerning and they are going to pay more attention to the client experience. They're going to pay more money for the client experience. And because in a increasingly competitive environment, the best way to stand ahead and to make the most money with the most minimal amount of effort is to continue to scale, to rise to the top, to be the cream of the crop, to be the one that stands apart so that you're no longer a commodity. Now, again, you said this earlier, there's no problem with being a commodity. And I've said this a million different times in a million different ways, where I talked about, the various different spaces that you can be in the mobile bar industry. If you're a budget mobile bar, if you're a mass market mobile bar, if you are playing volume, meaning that you want more events versus high dollar events, you need to do and operate differently. You need to focus on cost cutting. You need to focus on doing more events instead of quality events. You need to focus on building economies of scale, essentially. All of those are legitimate business models. It is just not the business model that we are going to teach. We teach client experience, we teach quality over quantity, we teach profitability, and there are the best, juiciest, fattest margins in that premium and luxury space.
So this workshop is not for you if you are seeking quantity over quality. If you want to be at every event that serves drinks, this is not for you. If you want to be the most budget friendly option in your market, this workshop is not for you. But if you want to create an exceptional client experience, one that is alluring, magnetic, and then people turn into raving fans and go out and sing your praises, this workshop is for you. And so really, if you're looking to be elite in your market, this is the place to be. And I think it's interesting because in the 2-ish years that I've been with Mobile Bev Pros, we ourselves have made this transition for who we're serving, because we used to really be a service for all mobile bar owners. Anyone can take the academy and get to six figures. And now we are recognizing the need to elevate within the industry. And so our niche is even getting smaller and smaller, because we're serving people who want to create something exquisite.
I love that you pointed that out because when we first started Mobile Bev Pros, it was $39 a month. And that's an achievable subscription for anybody who is starting a business and is honest with themselves that in order to make money, you have to spend money. If you're going to tap into somebody's vast knowledge and expertise, you should be willing to pony up a little cash for that, right? And so that was a very approachable and achievable investment. But what I found was that oftentimes people who are investing in that level didn't necessarily want anything more than checklist templates, copy and paste. They weren't really willing to really think about their business and engage in high level conversations about strategy and how they can differentiate what they're doing. They were just looking for a band-aid. They were just looking for a quick fix to whatever they were currently tackling. And while that is absolutely possible, it's not sustainable. And that's literally our vision, is to create industry leading mobile bar companies. And in order for us to do that, we have to stay ahead of the industry, right? We can't keep doing the same things forever. We have to stay on top of the industry. We have to see what's working. We have to push our clients further and further so that they maintain at the forefront. And what that required was elevating our price, elevating our content, elevating our options for people to work with us so that they could continue to think deeper, harder on where they wanted to go, what they wanted to be. And that required obviously more of our investment because everything now is a bit more industry term bespoke than it was when it was just like, here's a contract template, enjoy. Now, those things are still available within the academy, and those things are still an option through the accelerator. But the real work and the real magic of our programs these days and why the investment is so much higher is because we treat every business like an individual. And so my suggestions to Patrick, calling you out on the podcast, Patrick, are going to be vastly different than my suggestions to Melissa, who is a much different model than Patrick, right? And so there is no one size fits all. They're both unique and individualistic in how they show up. And so if I'm going to cater to that, then it has to be more of an investment. It can't be $39 a month, right? And then the last thing I'm going to say about the workshop that we're hosting is that it is not going to be an option to get this virtually. I know that's going to be the question is, can we attend virtually or can I get the replay? And the answer is no. It's not going to be available that way because it, again, is such a bespoke thing. If you want me, my eyes, my hands, my mind to work on your business, this is the workshop. You want to spend the day with me, have some bubbly after the event with me, you want to pick my brain, you want to network, then this is the opportunity to do that. And the reason that we're doing this at such a small scale and not offering the replay is truly because everybody that walks out of that workshop is going to walk out with an entirely different plan and an entirely different roadmap for their client experience.
And we're taking our own medicine here, right? And that when you do something that is luxurious, when you create from genius, it is not repeatable. And so to have a replay of something that was so intimate and so vast would discount the level of genius that you are going to bring to this workshop. When you talk about bespoke, it's just for you. This is crafted just for you. So everybody gets their own experience here.
So if what we've talked about today sounds attractive to you and like you would like to implement a detailed client journey for your business with Dawn and I in May in Nashville, then reach out to us because we have 6 tickets left as of the recording of this podcast. And I don't think they're going to last very long. But what I do know is that the 6 people that have already purchased the ticket are absolutely fantastic people to hang out with. And I'm very excited to hang out with them. The networking component of this, the masterminding, the synergetic energy that is going to be available for those in that room is going to be unparalleled. I'm very excited for it. I think people are going to leave entirely different business owners.
Absolutely. If you want in, email us hello@mobilebevpros.com. You can DM Sarah on Instagram, and that's really the only way to get a ticket. We don't have a buy now button. And so you have to reach out to us for more details or if you are ready to secure your seat.
That's right.
Awesome podcast. We'll see you on the next one.
And that wraps up today's episode. I hope it was valuable. I would love to hear from you what you thought. You can drop me a line at hello@mobilebevpros.com or find me on Instagram @mobilebevpros. If you're looking for more valuable mobile bar related content, we have a website full of it. You can find us at www.mobilebevpros.com. And I'd love to see you in our Facebook community, also by the name of, you guessed it, Mobile Bev Pros. Thank you for joining me today, and until next time, cheers.